Welcome to the Uncommon Living podcast, where we host dialogues in human resilience. I'm Thomas Seager. I'm an associate professor in the School of Sustainable Engineering at Arizona State University and the CEO of the Morozko Forge Ice Bath Company. My guest today is Sheryl Utal. She founded a venture called Japa Health so that she can share what she's learned about her own health journey and what it took for her to overcome her autoimmune disorders when the allopathic medical system had failed her. You had a history of autoimmune disorders and Hashimoto's that gave you an aversion to the cold. Will you tell me about that? Well, it's 35 degrees down in southern Florida.
Yeah, I will tell you all about it. So I turned 46 last week and I got diagnosed with Hashimoto's at the age of 25. But I suspect prior to that, I'd been suffering from whether it was full-blown Hashimoto's or, some metabolic dysfunction leading up to that for pretty much my whole life. Because as far as I can remember, my entire childhood, I struggled with all of the symptoms of Hashimoto's, all of them. I remember being a freshman in high school and I made the soccer team. And I lived in Las Vegas at the time, and soccer is a winter sport, and it gets cold in the desert. I mean, cold enough, it's not snowing all the time, but cold enough where it might be 35, 40, 50 degrees out, right? It's a little chilly. And I remember being like 14 years old and all the other girls playing on the field in, shorts, a t-shirt. Some of them maybe had a thermal under their t-shirt. And I'm blue hands, blue feet, like, really just a wreck, like incapable of playing and just non-functional. And nobody ever gave me any answers, amongst all of the other symptoms that I had. Barely able to get out of bed in the morning, like quite miserable, like really, really miserable, severe constipation, gut issues, brain fog, skin issues, the only symptom I didn't have, which I think threw doctors off for a long time, was I was real skinny. So I never got fat. I never had a weight problem, which usually helps people get diagnosed, unfortunately, with a thyroid disorder. But that was not my circumstance. So I did finally get that diagnosis at the age of 25, which was now 21 years ago. Spent the first couple of years following doctor's orders, take the Synthroid, keep going up, keep titrating up, and just not getting any better, right? Getting worse and worse and worse. Hair loss continued to get worse. I had this like sort of grayish look to me. There was definitely no glow, right? And I remember specifically being at a Christmas party, a work Christmas party, and going into the bathroom and looking in the mirror and being like, that's it. I'm done. Like, this can't be my life. I looked like shit. I had dark circles under my eyes. I felt like shit. And I've always been and still am an ambitious person. And I want a big life and a full life. And at that point, I was like, this can't be my life. Like, I can't settle for this. So I sat my butt down and started studying, and that hasn't stopped.
Wonderful.
Yeah, that
I
hasn't
have
stopped.
questions.
Yeah.
You were doing high school in Las Vegas.
hmm
Where did you live after high school?
California,
Southern?
Southern California.
Okay. And now you're in Florida. Were you living
Yeah.
in Southern California at the time of your Hashimoto's diagnosis when you were 25?
Yes, I was.
Um, what's your taste for seafood like?
Oh, I love seafood.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
if you're eating seafood, it doesn't sound like there's an iodine issue for you, but you probably looked into it.
Oh, I looked into it a ton. And you know what? I have a shellfish allergy too, which I always felt intuitively was correlated, but I've never been able to actually pinpoint that
That's
in any of
frustrating.
my research. Yeah, I've never been
Yeah.
able to pinpoint like any direct scientific correlation that's been like, there it is. Um, Yeah, I mean, I can tell you what I believe led to, because I no longer have autoantibody levels like that, and thyroid
Good.
works normally, and I have no symptoms of Hashimoto's anymore.
Yay.
But I can tell you what I believe was the storm that brought me down. I had a very common but unfortunate childhood of kind of narcissistic, anxious, verbally abusive parents. Okay. There was never peace in my home. I didn't have a grid for what peace was. I didn't know what it felt like to be relaxed. Right. So there was this undercurrent of constant sympathetic activation within me that I didn't even know that that was my baseline. I didn't know
Yeah.
that, right? Until many
You're a
years later.
kid.
And I
You
think,
have got nothing to compare it to.
no, nothing,
Yeah.
nothing. And I mean, sadly, I think a lot of adults still have no idea. I mean, there's an old quote, you've probably seen it. People say, like, you have no idea how good your body is designed to feel, right? So many people have been sick for so long, they really have no idea what actually feeling good, like what is optimal. Like, do people even
Right.
really know or have a grid for that? So I certainly didn't know what it could possibly feel like to have peace. And so I think that was a huge driver, like, just in the cell danger response for my entire life. I was put on birth control at the age of 17. I think that was a
Ouch.
massive insult.
Yeah.
And I was administered antibiotics over and over and over and over again for chronic UTIs, which
So your
of course
gut is all jacked
they
up.
weren't, yeah, they
Yep.
weren't even UTIs. There was inflammation of the bladder. It was cystitis. It wasn't even an infection. Um, and eating the wrong diet, living under artificial lights, um, not having proper respiratory mechanics, never fully exhaling, all these kinds of things. Um, not knowing who I am, not knowing my voice, not being able to activate my voice, living with immense amounts of self-criticism, right? And so being at war with yourself will definitely like send that threat response, signal that danger response. And I think that's probably the bulk of it, that's probably the majority of it. I mean, I'm sure there were other environmental toxins, here and there, that to me, just kind of is like table stakes, right? Like if you're on a healing journey, that's table stakes. Like, you start cleaning up the basic things, you start paying attention to like the lotions you're putting on your skin and stuff like that. Do I think that was the root cause of? No, I don't. I think that, the burden was probably really heavy across the board. And so those things all got cleaned up. But I think it was severe gut dysbiosis, severe, nervous system dysregulation, a terrible internal state and relationship with myself, poor breathing mechanics, never being able to relax, and a poor light environment, circadian rhythm. And to some degree, the improper nutrition. I mean, I always
Mhm.
had a relatively whole foods diet. I never was somebody that like ate junk food, or really drank alcohol or smoked cigarettes or anything like that. Like that was not really my issue. But when you get into the nuances of the kind of diet that you probably support and I support now, um, it matters, right? It matters to have protein in the morning instead of oatmeal or whatever, you know what I mean? Or instead of pancakes, whatever. So, making those shifts were important. I still don't think they were the number one thing. For me, it was self-regulation, really being able to get into meditative states to calm my nervous system, really send a signal of safety. For me, I think that was the foundation of everything that I've been able to achieve in my life, including my health, relationships, professional achievements. Everything really has come down to me, to my relationship with myself and my sense of safety and my sense of presence. Because I made significant progress in my healing journey. But with all of that somatic work, matter of fact, I opened a large yoga studio that's now a chain in West LA in 2013 and was teaching somatics, breath work, yoga, meditation, sound healing. So did that for quite a long time and still do that. But it wasn't until I got into the circadian piece and I found Jack's work in around 2016, that I went from, so my autoantibody levels were like over 13,000, 14,000 when I was really ill. And, TSH was like 20s, way, way high, 20s, 30s, 40s. Like I have some old lab tests that I've looked through that I'm like, damn, no wonder I felt so bad. Um, and I really improved that quite significantly. And I had gotten my autoantibody levels down to like in the high 100s, like 180, 160, which is still clinically, not good, right? But when I dialed in their circadian piece, that's when I was able to get them like way under 100 and, feel like I probably should be feeling.
Yeah.
Um, and, always on the quest for, how can I challenge my resilience? How can I optimize my longevity? I'm closer to 50 now than I am to 40. And, you know, have aging parents that aren't in good health and, looking at that next chapter of life, like, I want to not just be okay, but be amazing. And so it's kind of the same story that I had when I was in my 20s of I don't want to settle, but with sort of a different tone.
Mhm.
So I've come a really long way. And the circadian piece was absolutely critical and, taking that next step. But cold is like the final frontier, and I'm very aware of it, very aware. Um, but it just hasn't been something that I've focused on. Now, here and there, there's been a cold plunge, if I'm at like a sauna place or something and they have one, I've done contrast therapy. It's not like I've never done it. I've never gotten in cold water. But I don't own a cold plunge. It's not something I prioritize, but I'd like that to change. I'd really like that to change big time.
What about this whole feeling of being safe? You get into that cold plunge and you're going to feel like you're under
Yeah,
attack.
but that's a consciousness game at this point, right? I mean, because you can tell yourself it's not in my mind, unlike the hot yoga experience, right? And I own a hot yoga studio now once again,
Mhm.
which I opened in August here in Florida. So I had once upon a time said I'll never do that again because I exited in 2018. Um, but here we are. So when God says this is your mission and
You
this is
go
what
back
your
to what you
genius zone
know.
is, and this is, yeah, it's like somehow you just can't avoid it, so I'm doing it again, and it's been really great for my soul actually to be in the space again and teaching again, helping me stay connected to the roots of my own personal transformation. And we've been holding space for so many amazing people. It's been really great for the last few months. um, but, I say it all the time, like, you're in an experience in a hot yoga class and it starts to feel overwhelming, right? And the heat starts to feel overwhelming. And it's the ability to activate the ujjayi breath and to send that signal of conscious safety to the nervous system that, I chose this, right? And this is in that moment when I choose resilience and I choose to have that inner awareness of this is how I cultivate capacity for discomfort. And so I'm well practiced in that. Like I would consider myself a master, but not with the stimulus of cold. That's where I need to flex that muscle. And it's something that I've trained myself in for 20 years now. But it's time to create new adaptation for sure.
Part of the challenge of the cold is what Andrew Sheridan pointed out to me. Its relationship with stress and time is backwards. When you're in hot yoga, you first get in the room and you're like, oh, this isn't too bad. I'm going to knock out a couple of half monkey moon twists and I'll be all right. 10 minutes later, the sweat is pouring down and you're going, oh, this
Yeah.
is, this is a little harder than I thought. Maybe we'll
Yeah.
just do a little cat cow. And 20 minutes later, you think you're going to die and you have to get out of there. The stress gets worse over time. It's the same if you're on the treadmill, any kind of
Mm,
exercise. It's the same in a lot of situations where you start off and you think, this isn't so bad. You bite into that hot pepper and you're like, oh, I got this. And then 45 seconds later, your mouth is on fire and you could drink like a
yeah.
whole cow of milk and you're begging for
And yeah.
relief.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cold's the opposite. The worst part of the cold is the 15 minutes of anticipation before you even get into the ice bath and you're just
Yeah.
staring at those chunks of ice, thinking about how terrible it's going to be. Then the first 15 seconds really suck. That's the panic response. The sympathetic nervous system is taken over. You think you're going to die. 30 seconds later, you're going, what was I so worried about? The
Yeah.
cold gets better over time. And unless we
Hmm.
can kind of talk and breathe our way through those first 15 or 30 seconds, we're going to let all of our previous experiences of stress fool us. We're going to think, okay,
Mm,
I made it through those 30 seconds, but man, when it gets worse, I'll never make it through another minute. And all that panic comes down on us. Instead, when we
uh-huh.
say, oh, so this is what cold feels like. I haven't felt this
Yeah.
cold in a long time. And we're just
Yeah.
focusing on structuring our breathing. Then the
Hmm.
dopamine hits the brain, the norepinephrine takes over.
I'm ready. Sign me up.
There we go. Let's get you over here,
Sign me
Sheryl.
up. Yeah, sign me up. This is exactly what I'm excited about. 2 months ago, 3 months ago, maybe, I bought a few 5-pound bags of ice and put them in my bathtub. And it's that sting. It's for me, it's the sting that I'm not sure I could get into and tolerate and manage. I would need to build up to it.
Hmm.
Um, I think that that's probably the most reasonable approach for me, and maybe everybody. I don't know if some people can just get in. Um, it's the sting, the physical sting. It's a burn or something that was the most challenging for me. But then once I got over that, I was able, and I didn't have a thermometer, so I don't know how cold I made it, you know. But I was inspired. Let's just say that. And then whenever I see Kelsey like chipping away at her ice, I'm like, how does she just get in? You know, she just gets in. And I'm
She's
just
been
like, savage.
practicing.
I want that. Yeah, exactly. It's like anything else, you know. And so I haven't had, other than my business endeavors, which have tested me immensely. I haven't had any kind of test that really challenges my resilience. You know, for a while I was on the how different can I handstand this way? Can I press up to handstand? Can I do a back bend in a handstand? You know, so there's all these different things that I've tried to put my body through and I've accomplished them. And so now I'm like, what? I need a new challenge.
Mhm.
I
Well,
need something.
you might as well try it and see what's in it for you. The temperature of your bathtub, it probably wasn't very cold, but you don't have a
No,
history of cold. You're not cold acclimated. And so for
no,
you, 60 degrees Fahrenheit might be like, oh my God, what's going
yeah,
on
yeah,
here?
yeah. Maybe, yeah, maybe.
Sheryl, what is health?
Hmm. Um, Coherence. If I
Yeah,
had
I
to
don't know
say
what
one
that
word,
means. I hear that coherence a lot. Brian
it's
Grimm and Rick Cohen are always talking about coherence this, coherence that. And I don't know what it is yet. So maybe you could explain it. But for right now, we're talking
huh.
what is health?
It depends on how deep you want to go, but to unpack coherence, coherence is the ability to be in harmony with yourself and with your environment. So that's definitely a really important aspect that I don't believe you can be healthy without. I believe health is also resilience and adaptability.
Tell me about the resilience adaptability part.
Well, it's an ability to come back to coherence when you've lost it. So it's coherence and then the resilience to me, right? So I
Okay,
think
you're
those are the
making
two. I
some
mean,
sense.
yeah,
I just looked up the etymology of coherence, and according
yeah.
to the Google AI overview, which usually isn't bad, but I also like the online etymology dictionary, coherence is a Latin word that means working together, staying together, suitable connection or dependence, consistency from the 16th century. Evidently, there was a French word that was very similar. And so, this idea of being in harmony with your environment, coherence seems like a pretty good word to try and capture that. When you say health has to do with adaptability and resilience, that's a little bit different than coherence. We know that the environment changes, the seasons
Hmm.
change, there's
Hmm.
day, there's night. And so
Hmm.
coherence is not just one state. It must be the capacity to move through different states. If you're going to stay in
Hmm.
coherence, then your body must adapt. And so that's really helpful. However, in medicine, health used to be thought of as the absence of disease. What a
Yeah,
terrible way to think about it.
that's terrible. Yeah,
Right?
that's
You
yeah.
know what has no disease? A dead body. Like a
Yeah.
rock is not diseased, and neither
Yeah.
is my great grandmother. It's not it's not helpful to think of health as a state, but it's easy to think of it that way. We often think of health as like a snapshot or a Polaroid in time. That's what a lab test is. So we get labs
Hmm.
back, and that's just one little frame in the entire movie of our life that says, this is where your blood markers were here. It can be useful sometimes when things are really out of whack. When that HbA1c comes back at 7.2, you got type 2 diabetes. It's long
Yeah.
past the point where you should be doing something
Yeah.
about it. But most of the labs are just going to say normal, 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 normal. I think of health like this. Health is not a state. It is your capacity to move between states. So you might look at someone with osteoporosis and say, well, their bones aren't broken, but they have no capacity to heal. It's not useful to think of health as anything else but a verb. That is the capacity to heal. If we really want to know whether your bones are healthy, we'd break them and see how long it takes to heal. Now, we don't want to go around with this
Mhm.
destructive testing like we do, in
Right, right.
structural engineering. What we're really looking for is the body's capacity to move between states. So one example is the VO2 max. VO2 max is not a measure of health. I mean, it's okay, but it's a measure
Yeah.
of maximum power output. It's a measure
Hmm.
of throughput. What's much more interesting to me than the VO2 max, because I'm not a super competitive athlete. I don't need to know my VO2 max so I can shave,
Yeah.
5 minutes off my triathlon time or something like
Right.
that. How long does it take the heart to return from VO2 max rate to resting? That's
Yep.
health. How fast can you move between states? How quickly do you recover or respond to stress so that you get back into that state of calm? This is one of the reasons why the ice bath is wonderful, because you get in and you're activating the sympathetic nervous system. Your liver is releasing glycogen, creating a temporary glucose spike. Your brown fat is activated, clearing that glucose out and begins to work on the lipids in your bloodstream. You can watch your heart rate go up and come back down.
Hmm.
We've measured
Hmm.
brain waves. They go into activity and they come back down. We're pendulating between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. And that's the kind of thing that improves with practice. So
Yeah. Oh,
when I
yeah.
say what is health, I'm hoping for that answer that has to do with resilience, the adaptation to your
Hmm.
environment, the recovery from stress, the capacity to pendulate between feast and famine, light and
Yeah.
dark, exercise and rest. So I'm wondering if that works well for you.
Absolutely. It completely resonates with me. I would prefer to be in a state of coherence the majority of the time, but knowing that there are going to be circumstances that pull you out of it, and then the ability to get back to it consciously, strategically, right? Without letting it overwhelm you. To me, that's health, right? Knowing that you're going to have to ride that wave sometime, which is where the resilience comes into play and the adaptability comes into play that you have to train for. So you don't just get knocked down. Um, but because of my history with trauma, I feel it is important because I've experienced both to reside in a place of peace and safety the majority of the time. If you're walking around chronically incoherent, chronically sympathetically activated, where there's not a smooth and coherent breath rhythm and you're not aware of your breath, right? Like right now, I shouldn't be stressed out in this conversation, right? But a lot of people are operating like that all the time because they've never actually trained themselves to get into a place of coherence, right? Now, if the alarm starts going off and it startles me, maybe my heart rate will go up and then I realize everything's fine. It's just the alarm and I'm able to regulate my breath consciously, right? But that's something, like you said, I've practiced quite a bit, that self-awareness to know what is it that my autonomic nervous system is responding to? And do I have the conscious control to tell myself that I am in fact safe, even though there's some stimulus that's
One of
triggering
the
that response?
One of the things I like about what you're saying is that you're focusing internally. The
Mm-hmm.
universities are coming out of this incredibly stupid period of trigger warnings and safe spaces and a bunch of garbage that is actually designed to foster mental illness in our students.
Yeah,
There, the thought was that safety is something that exists outside of you. And it's
that's
pretty
ridiculous.
easy to understand.
Yeah.
Like when you're a child, and you're sort of helpless in this world, and all these giants around you, whether they're your parents or teachers, it's very easy to develop the idea that safety is something outside of you. But then you grow up, and we still cling, especially at the typical age of college students, we still cling to these childlike beliefs because we were never really challenged. I shouldn't say we. Some people were never really challenged as adolescents to
Society.
find out what they were really capable of. And so instead of discovering as adults that the safety exists inside them, they're still fostering this illusion that
Yeah.
they have no control, as if they were
Hmm.
competing in the victimhood Olympics, and they're
Hmm.
going
Oh,
for a
yeah, I
medal.
know. Yeah, I
It's
know.
terrible.
Yeah. Interoception is a big concept that I teach in all my trainings. So it's that ability to, I teach it every day in the yoga studio, right? It's the ability to tune into the subtle energy that's flowing through you and to attune to and interpret the language of that energy, to become conscious of it and to develop a relationship with it so that it's always within you. And there's no pill for that. You can't pay somebody to do it for you, right? That's the flex, right? That right there is awareness, is consciousness. It's like, how much can you hold on to that awareness while you're also scanning the room, while you're also responding to the conversation that you're in, right? To be able to perceive the information that's coming in through you and around you and about your environment, and to be able to adapt to it, to flow through it, and to make a conscious choice about how you want to respond rather than letting it overwhelm you. That's
Okay,
all part of health.
you call it interoception. I call it you got to channel your inner MacGyver. Like you don't
Yeah.
know what's going to happen. Maybe someday you're going to have to stop a nuclear meltdown with a chocolate bar and chewing gum or something. I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but
That's
we are
funny.
all
Yeah.
creative and ingenious. The feeling of
Mhm.
safety is not knowing what's going to happen. It's not removing all the uncertainty and the ambiguity. It's saying,
And it's
whatever
trusting yourself.
right. I'll figure it out. I got it.
Yeah.
Something's going to
1000%.
come up. There will always be a thing. Some of our most
Hmm.
deeply rooted Western folk tales, mythologies, try and teach this. The trials of Hercules. He's got to go
Hmm.
through these 12 things. He doesn't know what he's going to do. He doesn't know what these
Yeah.
trials are. But there's always a thing in this mythology. There's always a tactic or a resource or something available to Hercules that he can use in some ingenious way to overcome the trial. Our lives are like that. There, it's not going to be laid out for us, but there
Hmm.
will be something in our environment. I mean, entrepreneurship is the worst because every
I
time
know.
I think I'm done, Morozko is finished, I'll get into the ice bath, convinced that this is probably the last day we're ever going to make ice baths. And I'll get out and I'll say, probably this is our last day. But I have three more ideas. I haven't tried
Yeah.
these three things yet.
Yeah. Oh,
I'm going
yeah.
to try one of these
Hmm.
before I quit. And I've been doing that for at least 2 years now.
Yeah. I've been doing it for 5 with Japa Health.
Yep.
I mean, this starts to cross into the spiritual realm, right? And when you start to talk about trusting in yourself, it's also, to me, interconnected with a trust in the divine, right? In that there will always be some amount of support from the universe, whatever that looks like, right? That there's the people that you need, the resources that you need, the support that you need will always be there. That you're not going to die alone in the woods, right? Like
Right.
that's that primal fear. And, I think all ancient spiritual texts try to teach this, right? That, that's part of the path to liberation, is having faith and having trust. Now, it's not an easy thing to do, especially on the entrepreneurial journey, especially if you're sick, especially if you've got a doctor that's told you that whatever it is that you're suffering from can't be cured. You're going to need to be on this medication
What
forever.
a
We don't know why
terrible
this
message.
happens. It's a
That's
terrible
awful.
message.
Yep.
It's the most disempowering thing to hear. And it is the antithesis of what the message is that we should be teaching people, which is that anything is possible. And if you believe something hard enough, I mean, we have the placebo effect to prove this, then, the biology of the belief can actually trigger the epigenetic response within your physiology to change your
Yep.
biology.
A much
So
better
all of this is
approach
part of my
instead
world.
of you have a chronic degenerative disease that is going to get worse your entire life and require increasing levels of pharmaceutical intervention. That's the usual message for autoimmune disorders. A much
Mhm.
better message is we are going to keep experimenting until we figure this out. We are going to figure this out. It might not be on the first try or the second try or the third try. Everything that we do is going to teach us something until we figure this out. And that's how I go through entrepreneurship now. That's how I'm going through my life now. I was listening to Jensen Huang, or maybe it's Jensen Huang, the NVIDIA founder. He was on
Uh-huh.
Joe Rogan. And most of this was really boring crap about artificial intelligence and, is there life
Yeah.
on Mars or whatever it is. When he was talking about some of his dark moments. The moment that he had to go to the CEO of Sega and say, the $5 million left on our contract isn't going to do you any good because our technology isn't going to work. And by the way, I
Hmm.
still want the $5 million because if I don't get it,
Hmm.
then the whole company is over. Would you invest it in equity instead of paying
Hmm.
us to build technology that won't work? The thing about there's always a resource, there's always a way, there's always a lifeline, is
Hmm.
you have to be open to it. You have to look
Hmm.
for it. You have to, part of the faith is thinking that it's there, even if you
Yeah.
have no evidence. Faith that is
Yep.
like, well, it's all going to work out in the end. I'm sure it will be fine is useless for me. Faith that there is a way out, there is a path, there is an experiment, there is an idea that I haven't discovered yet, and I'm going to keep looking
Yeah.
until I find it. That's the kind of faith that I have. That's the kind of faith that came through from Jensen Huang when he was saying,
Mm.
he goes to the freaking president of Sega. He says, by the way, I just screwed up that contract. We're totally wrong about everything. Can I have 5 million bucks? And
Yeah.
he got it.
I've done that. I've done that. It hasn't always worked out.
Of course
I went
not.
to
You don't
my,
always
I
get
went to my,
yes.
no, I mean, I went to my investors and I was like, hey, so I couldn't get any more money from anybody else, and you guys have an option. Can you just exercise that right now? The answer was no, but I tried, I tried.
You
Um,
only need one yes. So
you
you
know,
go ask
you
six
know
more.
what
Yeah.
what I have felt very deeply, the test was for me in my journey that I think a lot of people experience, that the deepest block to accomplishing that is the self-worth that
Yep.
you are not only capable, but worthy of the thing, whether it's the $5 million that he was asking for or whatever. And that comes back then to the trust that you have the trust in yourself to figure it out, right? So, well, if he says yes, and I get that 5 million, am I going to disappoint him again?
Mm.
Right. And so
Yeah,
if you
that's a lot of
feel right,
pressure. Who
yes.
who wants
So
that?
the audacity is really important. Like you got to put yourself on the frequency of success and the belief in yourself, right? And the confidence to figure it out, and to get out of your own way and to remove any of that doubt that like rests inside of your system and your energy system. And I'm a big fan of Heart Math Institute and the research that's come out of Heart Math. And Bruce Cryer, who's an amazing man, is on our board. He was the CEO of Heart Math for like 11 years. I've done a lot of work with all of their research. If you've never explored it, it's pretty interesting stuff. Just really understanding the magnetic field of the heart, and
Mm,
how
what a
if
good
we
idea.
rest in the heartfelt feeling and knowingness of and this comes back to coherence as well, right? Of this thing that we want, this, whether it's the investment or the customers or the partnership or the health, this thing that we want, we have to believe in our heart first, right? Because that will magnetize the possibility for us in the field. And really understanding this relationship to what it is that we broadcast and that we believe about ourselves is going to be reflected to us in our experience. And there's a level of
That's true.
perception there that people around us can tune into at an unconscious level. So if you don't believe that you're worthy of it, if you don't believe that you're capable of it, it's not going to manifest for you. And this is the deepest level of work that I've had to do, and I still do to this day. And I think that whether people are aware of it or not on an entrepreneurial journey, everybody has to face. This is the biggest spiritual test of, being an entrepreneur, and then the authenticity that comes with it of,
I got
okay,
two
this is
things.
me.
The I got two sort of anecdotes or stories. The first one is I spent 3 years teaching improv theater at ASU. I had a friend, Boyd Branch, and he's in the theater directors program at that school, and I'm an engineer. And we wanted to teach improv theater to physical science and engineering doctoral students. So we set up a course. And one of the things that Boyd taught me is that in any conflict, whether it's on stage or whether it's in our interpersonal relationships, there are four types of defensive strategies. He created a grid. There's pleasant and unpleasant, and there's high status and low status. So you combine these two dimensions and you get like a four squares, right? Uh, Unpleasant high is defensive in this way. It says, don't bite me, I bite
Hmm.
back, you know?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Unpleasant low would be, oh, don't bite me. I don't taste very good. Both of these are defensive. He says
Hmm.
the key to improv theater, and we're not really talking about comedy, although, that's wonderful. What we're talking about is teaching scientists and engineers to communicate their science better. Every course in
Mm.
public speaking is stand up straight and minimize your disfluencies, speak
Yeah.
clearly, look out over the tops of the heads of the audience. And it's all crap. It's all
Yeah.
defensive crap. So you look good to the audience, and the audience doesn't care. You're the only one who cares.
Yeah.
What Boyd was teaching was connection compared to
Hmm.
defensiveness. Don't
Hmm.
bite me, I bite back is not connection. It's defensive behavior. In
Yeah, for
order to
sure.
present well, you've got to connect with that audience, and that
Hmm.
means being vulnerable.
Hmm.
Oh, smart. So I got a lot out of that one. We are going to reveal our fears and insecurities to whomever it is that we're speaking with. It could be a customer or an investor or
Hmm.
any other stakeholder. We know them. They don't. We know them because we're just like little kids walking around the neighborhood in a Halloween costume, pretending to be a dinosaur. We knock on the door and we say, "Trick or treat, would you put like a sail into my little bag?" And some part of us is hoping that the neighbor doesn't really know who we are.
Right.
Well, we know those insecurities and we leak them out. And then the
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
neighbors, like, the customers, they're not going to see them until we show them. And sometimes that's okay. And sometimes we'll try and cover them up with these defensive behaviors that don't cover them at all, that really just reveal them. Okay, so that's one.
Yeah. Yeah.
The second one is a story about a study. This is back when people had newspapers. And these psychologists told their subjects that they were doing like some kind of a memory test or something like that. What they really wanted to know was whether people were lucky or not. Are there some people who are lucky and some people who are unlucky? And so they did this questionnaire and it was all about memory. And they the questions about, are you lucky? Are you a lucky person, 1 to 10? Then they gave them a newspaper and they asked the people in the newspaper, they say, you're going to count how many ads, how many display ads featuring a child there are in this newspaper. And you've got, 30 seconds to go through the whole thing and blah, blah, blah. And if you get it right, you win, $100. And they hit on the like page 4, a little note. And it says, congratulations, there's 8 ads. Here's $100. The
Okay.
ones who scored like, I'm going to make it up, but the ones who said they were very lucky, 7 and above or something, they all found the note. They all got the $100. The ones who thought they were unlucky, they went through every page and they wrote it all
And they didn't
down and
see it.
they told the scientists, I saw 7.5 ads or, whatever it was. Only the people who believed they were lucky got lucky. And so part of this sort of you gotta know that there's something out there. There's a way, there's a path, there's a resource, there's a helping hand. Is thinking, yeah, but I'm lucky. I'm going to go talk to the president of Sega and I'm going to ask him for $5 million that he should probably be pounding on the table demanding that I return. And how's that going to work out for you, Jensen? And Jensen might say, well, I'm lucky. So I think it's going to work out fine. I've been trying to cultivate that attitude in my own life. I'm going to keep
Mm.
trying until I get lucky. And it won't be
Mm.
luck when it happens. That's not the story that I'm really going to tell
It will
myself.
be manifestation
Yeah, that's one
of,
way to put it. I think that's too passive.
yes, I understand that is very passive because manifestation does require action. It's not like you just
Correct.
sit and pray about it,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
This
Yeah,
is
you
my
can
friend Rocket.
manifest DoorDash to bring a Burger King to your doorstep as long as you got $40 and a phone app.
I
Manifestation
know.
requires that you get off the couch and look for the things.
I completely agree with you about that. And I'll tell you an interesting story um, about this exact thing that happened very recently in my life. So, um, I raised $1.4 million for Japa Health. I was on the venture path for a while. I'm not really on that path at the moment, um, for a number of different reasons. Um, fundraising for women is, and I tried really hard to not give this any power for a while, but the reality is fundraising for women tends to be significantly more difficult than it is for men. And you just look at the statistics, and less than 2% of women get, it's like 1.7% of women get any venture funding at all. So, to have raised this proper seed round, over $1 million from an institutional, from a publicly traded company was pretty good. And I thought, okay, this is validation. And from here, it will be easier because now I've gotten validation from, a publicly traded company that's invested 7 figures. And that wasn't the case. Part of that was timing because everybody, every sector, every stage, every gender, every age was struggling for the last, I'd say, 36 months in the venture
Yeah.
space. So it wasn't really unique to me, but being a very decentralized focused female that, doesn't bow down to institutional status quo stuff, there was just not really a good fit for me in Silicon Valley. But if I'm honest with myself, I believe that none of that matters and that there's always a possibility of anything, right? There's no limit to what is possible. And there probably are investors that are looking for me, right? There's like the what you seek is seeking you type of
Yep.
concept. And I do believe that to be true, but I did put a pause on that for a while. And I decided, so I moved here from Southern California in September of 2024. So it's been a little over a year since I've been here. My partner was here for longer and I was going back and forth. And I finally was like, okay, I can't do this anymore because he hit the eject button out of California before I did. He was like, I can't be here anymore.
Could
So
you blame him?
no, I don't blame him at all. I don't blame him at all. He had a gym in Laguna Niguel and
Yeah.
refused to close the gym
Yeah.
and, refused to be the mask police and all that stuff. So, that just took a toll on him. And he was like, I'm going to end up hurting somebody. Like, I can't be in this anymore. So I got to go. So he came before I did. And then I was back and forth for a while. And when I moved out here, there was no place to practice anywhere nearby. So I'm in Pasco County, which is about 45 minutes north of Tampa, and Orlando Lakes is about 45 minutes north of Tampa. And even going downtown Tampa, I was very underwhelmed with the quality of what I was experiencing, especially as somebody who is like one of the top leaders in the space in California, where, you have the highest standards for these kinds of experiences pretty much anywhere, right? Like standards are pretty high. So in order to have a very successful service-based business, it's better be the best, right? And so I was very successful doing this in West LA for almost 6 years. And to come out here, and I just want to take a good class in a clean environment with good teachers that are educated in biomechanics and yoga philosophy and know their shit. And I was like, this doesn't exist out here. And so, because my partner was in the gym business his whole career too, we were like, shit, maybe we should open a yoga studio. I think we would crush it. There's demand for it. We started looking at demographics. There's plenty of people with money. There's plenty of people out here. And this opportunity came up that was like a long shot. Okay. This woman owned this yoga studio, walking distance from the house that she'd had for 12 years. And I had heard from somebody that she might be burnt out and you should just go talk to her. So I go in to take a class, and I had actually been in there one time before, like 6 months earlier, to check it out. And it was not for me at all. It was
Yeah.
not for me at all. So I go back in and she remembered me and I said nothing to her. She said, "Oh, you're that yoga teacher from California." And I said, yeah. And she said, "Oh, class is on me today." And I'm like, "Okay, great." So I took the class, and the entire time that I was in that room, I kept thinking to myself, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you
Hmm.
for the space. Thank you for the space. And really felt this deep sense of knowing within my heart that it's mine.
That's a good one.
It's mine. It's done. And the difference between that experience, and it wasn't necessarily easy, but she did say to me that day when I was walking out, "Hey, do you want to teach here?" And I said, "Well, I don't know about that, but maybe we could talk." She said, "Well, hell, maybe you just buy the whole thing." This is a true story. Okay. And the difference between that and the other experience of being told no, I don't know, 500
Yep.
times from investors is that I can tell you without a doubt that I had no doubt.
Yep.
I had no doubt in my heart whatsoever
Yep.
That not only was that business mine, it was already done, that it was going to be wildly successful and fun. Like it was going to be amazing. Like the whole experience was felt in my heart as if it had already happened
Yep.
without any doubt. And I made that happen.
Cheryl, that's wonderful.
And it is, and it's been amazing. But when I compare that to the friction that I've experienced with growing Japa Health and getting it to market and raising money and building the tech, um, I know in my own system that part of the work is the audacity to believe that it's already done.
Yep.
And having that faith and having that trust has been an ongoing, consistent practice for me. And it's not as clear of a signal.
Okay. How do we get you started on a practice of cold plunge?
No. I don't know. I don't know. I need to figure that out.
You go to, I don't know, do some of this research. You can go to Reddit and see what people say. And there's a lot of complaints about
Research.
cold plunge companies because they're notorious for tricking people into buying their,
Mm,
units. And then they have warranty exclusions and crappy customer service. It's all very Chinese dropship business model stuff.
yeah.
But on Reddit, the biggest complaint about Morozko is we're too expensive. And we are. We make them in Phoenix. We build every single one, by hand. All the people in America, they seem to be stuffed full of expertise about manufacturing because everyone is telling me that I'm doing it wrong. Now, they've never manufactured anything in their life and they don't know how to
Right.
solder or weld or
Isn't
anything, but they're saying,
that funny, right?
that's not how you do it. And it must be
Yep.
because manufacturing is taught in our business schools or something is you call up Shenzhen, you go on Alibaba, you hit a couple of buttons, and then the Chinese stuff comes up. We're
Yeah.
doing it differently and it's more
Yeah.
complicated. It's harder to figure out. It keeps us closer to our customers and it means that we can improve the quality faster. We get feedback, we make a change. We learn something new, we make a change because we don't have to wait 6 months for a Chinese engineer to figure it out. However, you might be making it like a little overwhelming. We have progressed our technology to this point where I'm embarrassed by what we shipped 2, 3 years ago. The one that I
Mm.
have, you can see it over
That's
my
the startup
shoulder.
journey, though. But
Yeah,
that's the
it's
startup
right.
journey. Yep,
It's
it is.
classic. This thing
Yeah.
on my balcony that I'm in every day, that I was in right before we started recording, it's a jalopy compared to what we make now because I don't have the cash to upgrade my own ice bath. I'm
Mm.
putting this into other people's ice baths. So I shoot my
Yeah.
videos from this old stock tank, zinc galvanized thing,
Whatever.
right? And actually, secretly, I have an affection for this. There's a little nostalgia. I feel a little attached to my machine, and I don't really want to let it go. Some people don't have the problem that I have. And every time we come out with something new or bigger, better, they will send us the old one back and they'll upgrade. We're pretty generous about the upgrading. I have an old one, a stock tank, just like the one that I used, zinc galvanized round thing. And I look at it and I go, what a piece of crap. You're going to look at it and there's going to be ice in there. And you're going to say, how did I ever let Professor Seager talk me into this? And so maybe the way to start is not with the newest, slickest, bestest thing,
I'm not going to know the difference.
because you're just starting out. They're not a good deal compared to Costco. Like you can get, a plastic inflatable cold tour. If you have an appetite for brominated flame retardants and phthalates and forever chemicals, you should totally go down to
Go get
Costco.
that one. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly right. And
Yeah.
let that new car smell just,
Yeah.
envelop
Yeah.
you as you think about all the money you saved. I can't do it because I don't believe in poisoning my customers, but there's a
Right.
lot cheaper stuff out there than
Well, I was
Morozko.
going to say when you said people say it's too expensive, I don't resonate with that word expensive. It's the price is relative to the value that you perceive.
Correct. Yep.
So the word expensive like isn't really in my vocabulary.
Here's what's
Um,
expensive. Buying something for $1,500 that breaks 2 months later calling the
Yeah,
people
that's
that you bought it
expensive.
from who won't answer, and then spending all of this
Mm.
time, 6 weeks later, you got a part, but they won't install it. And then you got to find a plumber or an electrician or a dishwasher repairman. And then 3 weeks later, of
Oh my
course,
God.
it breaks
Yeah.
again. It's a
Yeah.
nightmare. The
Yeah.
people who are really effective leaders um, realize they're not time constrained. You know, everybody's out there on Instagram saying, "Oh, time, it's the thing that you never get anything more of." And we have
Hmm.
all the time in the world. You, me, everybody on the planet has all the time in the world. The problem is not our time, it's our energy. Those things that
Hmm.
suck the energy out of us. They make us feel weak, like we got to sit on the couch and reach for one of those foil pack, bags of Doritos just so we can
Ew,
soothe
gross.
our feelings about something. Or, man, that is the waste that we got to cut out of our
Yeah.
life. When we have energy for things, it's like we cannot be fatigued. We're in that flow
Hmm.
state and we're like, yeah, I'm going to do more. I'm going to do more. You stay in
Yeah.
that state, you cannot help but succeed.
Yeah, I agree.
That's how
Yeah,
I
I
measure
definitely
expense
agree.
now. Like
Me
cash is a
too.
constraint, but it's a
I will
tool.
say some things are energetically expensive.
Right. That's what I mean to say.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
energetic expense is worth so much more to me than just the money expense. But I live in a world of monetary constraints. And so I have
I
to
know.
understand that and respect that.
Yeah, it's just I think that when we use certain words, and I try to be as conscious of this as possible, and I love that we started this conversation with you looking into the etymology of a word, because that's a practice that I do as well. I just feel like it gives things a certain power,
Yep.
and that word expensive when it comes to money, I don't like using it like that, because it sort of disrespects the value of the thing. And it's like,
Yep.
okay, well, that thing has a lot of value. That's why it's priced that way. Does it make it
Correct.
expensive?
Yep. It could be a great deal. It could be a great deal at $22,000. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What are you going to get out of it? Yeah.
You reminded me of
Yeah.
another book, How Emotions Are Made. If I'm paraphrasing the title, I'm not remembering it exactly, but
I think I've heard of it, but I haven't read
very
that one.
provocative book. One of the things that I learned is that words are symbolic representations of concepts. We don't need words to experience emotions, but we can only experience about 10 if we don't have a word. Once we have a word,
Mm.
our sort of emotional, literally vocabulary, but our emotional repertoire expands to hundreds. And she gave an example in the book. She invented a word for that feeling when you have eaten the entire bag of potato chips and you feel bloated and sad because there's no more potato chips left, but you
Yeah.
also feel kind of ashamed of yourself and regret for having eaten them all, even though you wanted one more. She said the word is
Lisa
chiplessness.
Barrett?
Who is
Oh,
it?
no.
We're going to find this book.
Yeah. It says
So
How
that,
Emotions Are Made.
yep, powerful
Is that
book.
her?
That
I should
sounds
try
right.
it.
Yep. She believes that
Let's
there
look it
are
up in
no
Audible.
like foundational emotions, that research in psychology is flawed. Now, I think that research in psychology is pretty useful, but she says most of these studies where you're trying to find people without written language and you're trying to say, is happiness universal or is fear universal? They had to teach people these symbolic representations. They had to teach people the concept before they could observe it in the population. Now, I don't know about that part of the book so much, but when she said, once you create a word for a concept or an experience or something that can only otherwise be like a tacit knowledge, something that you have to gain through experience, this word is incomplete, but it hooks to it's a symbolic representation of this other concept and it expands
Yeah.
your ability to hold all these concepts and experience all these different emotions. Words, it turns out, are a technology. Just like a
Yeah.
calculator is a technology. I'm getting this from Neil Postman. Words are a technology for improving the quality of our thinking. And that's why I can't stop thinking about them. I obsess over etymology and the meaning of words.
I love the study of it. I mean, just thinking about the fact that I can say butterfly, and in your mind, you can conceptualize a version of a butterfly.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
And what will it be in your inner vision relative to whatever I
Yep.
intended it to be,
Yep.
right? I think neurolinguistics is a very fascinating thing to think about. I love it.
Diabetes is like $1 billion a day problem.
I know.
There are fortunes
Yeah,
to be made. I mean, if you
I know.
see it that way. Now, some people are going to go out of business, and I'm not going to mourn the passing
Nope.
of Pfizer or Moderna
Nope.
or GlaxoSmithKline. Or there's plenty of
Mm-mm.
room for those people that are going to empower patients to take charge of their own health and put the big pharmaceutical companies out of business.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. You think we'll see that in this lifetime?
I intend to live a long time. I think it's going to happen
Hey,
in my lifetime. Yeah.
I can tell you that the sentiment that I have seen and felt from the community that I'm experiencing here. Now, mind you, I'm not in West Los Angeles anymore, which is sort of different worldview than being in Pasco County, Florida, where the sheriff tells you if somebody gets near you, you need to shoot them and make sure they're dead. It's a little bit different attitude than West Los Angeles.
I'll bet you the
But,
people in Florida are a lot more polite to one another.
oh, they are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no road rage here, right? There's no road rage. Yeah, it's crazy how that works. But
Mhm.
my point is that it seems to be that every conversation that I have with people that come into the yoga studio, that even kind of dabble into this realm of health, wellness, the system, the establishment, centralized healthcare, all that stuff, the globalists, the technocrats, all the things. Um, like I think 99.9% of people know. They know and they're aware. They know that pharmaceuticals don't create health. They know that it's a profit-driven industry that has no real interest in creating quality of life for people.
Right.
I think that in the last 5 months of meeting people, there's one person I can think of that was starting to lecture me about how the sun causes melanoma. Other than that, yeah, I know. Every other person has expressed significant disgust and frustration and confusion because it's where do I, okay, now that I know that that's not the solution that I want to pursue, I still have questions and I still have symptoms
Yep.
and I still have needs. So how do I solve for that? Which is,
Exactly right.
what we try to do. Yeah, which is what we try to do. Now we don't deal with any acute care, right? So that's not what we're here for. So, if you have an ear infection or whatever, that's not the issue that we're addressing. We're here for long-term resilience. But I think that the people COVID was a huge fail. It was a success, but it was a
For-
fail.
Right.
You know what I mean?
For public health, it was a massive tragedy. Life
Oh yeah.
expectancy plummeted after the vaccine rollout. And it wasn't
Hmm.
COVID. It was the lockdowns. It was the
Oh
response
yeah.
to COVID. It was
Oh yeah.
the bullshit violation of human rights that killed people. And we have really good data on this.
Oh yeah.
Trust in the institutions that are supposed to safeguard public health is at an all-time low. But people,
Abysmal.
I lost a lot of friends because
Hmm.
universities are pretty freaking woke,
Hmm.
DEI, blue pill
Hmm.
bought in, right?
Hmm.
And
Yep.
because I work in the sustainability sphere and the environment, I intersect with climate change. I intersect with a lot of
Yeah.
like liberal, progressive ideas, and I don't mind. I've been an environmentalist since I was a kid. It's why I chose this career. That doesn't mean I'm drinking the climate change
Right.
Kool-Aid. But I can
Right.
still work on infrastructure and extreme weather, and I still care about the
Yeah.
chemical composition of the environment. Okay.
Hmm.
Um, some of those people who were like, oh, this is the big one. And I remember being that way myself for 2 days. They now realize it was all a fraud, but they're still
Uh-huh.
scared, but they're still going to take a statin because they don't know what else to do, because they're
Yeah.
afraid, because their doctor says,
Fear.
you have
Yeah.
to do this right away because your
Yeah.
cholesterol is
Yeah.
185.
Uh-huh. It's
The
the fear.
hell?
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and I can't reach them, and I
I
don't
know.
want to lose the few friends that I have left. Otherwise, I would live in an entire bubble. And so every once in a while, I'll send them a graph, I'll send them a study, I'll say, how's
Just
it working for
send
you?
them to Stephen Hussey, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
that's,
Yep. I
yeah.
care though about
Actually,
the people I have left.
the podcast that I did with him was, I think, my favorite of all of them. He's great.
I'm writing down Stephen Hussey.
Yeah.
I can invite him
Yeah.
to my pod. Yeah.
Invite him
Terrific.
to your podcast. I'll connect you
Yep.
guys. Have you guys not connected yet?
Nope. But I'd love that.
Oh, really?
Thanks,
Oh,
Cheryl.
definitely. In the realm of statins and the cardiovascular nightmare of,
Oh,
you know,
bring
what
it.
is the centralized storia? He's the best. Yeah, I
Yep.
adore him. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he's good friends with Kelsey. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. And it begs the question of, you know, should we, do we have any moral obligation to? Should we not? And even can we inspire any transformation of perspective in that type of thinking?
Right.
Um, that's a
All right,
more
let's
of an
keep working on it.
existential
We'll figure it
question.
out.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why we just keep pumping out the content,
Yeah.
telling the
Yep.
story, you know, trying to get the messaging right, you know, trying to inspire people to see a different view. And that's the pressure that I feel. It's like I feel my mission is to support the people that are ready. And I feel like I want to be doing a good job to get the message out as much as I can.
Correct. It'll resonate with those who are ready for it.
It has so far. Trying to turn the volume up.
Thanks, Cheryl. It's wonderful to meet you.
You too. You too.